called you out of darkness into His marvelous light.
Well, good afternoon. Um, Today, what I want to talk about is the position that we have with God. And I don't know about you, but I kind of have this delusional self-importance. I think that I matter. I think, that I'm an important person. I don't know if you guys think that about yourselves, but some of us do. You ever had this idea that maybe you'd like to be involved in something big and important? That you would like to feel like you accomplished something cool, that you were part of something that was meaningful and significant. Anybody feel that way? Anybody? Anybody not feel that way? Anybody just want to not do anything? Just kind of be nothing? Well, Cassidy probably can relate to that. There's that too. I mean, sometimes I just want to get back in bed. But I think it's common. I think people want to be important. Actually, in the book "Win Friends and Influence People," Dale Carnegie says that this is one of the main drives for people's lives. They want to feel important. I think it's just a common thing. We want to feel important. I want to feel significant. I want to feel like my life matters, like there's something that I bring to the universe. There's a reason for me to be here, that I did something meaningful. I have this reoccurring thought that I just like, and I think this is just pride or the desire to be important. But I'm like, man, I really hope there's a lot of people that come to my funeral when I die. It's probably going to end up me in the casket and, 3 people. But this idea, what's that? Well, some of them might not like me by that time. But I think we want to be important as a human race. And I think it's just something to have. And there's a strange phenomenon that exists because of that. And I think it drives a lot of human activity. This desire for importance. This is why when you ask people, how are they doing? They say, I'm just so busy. Because it makes me feel important if I'm busy. If you said, how are you doing? What have you been up to? And I was like, just nothing. Just nothing. You'd be like, wow, you're a loser. You're doing nothing. But if I say I'm really busy and I'm doing all these good things and I'm part of all this big stuff, then you can be like impressed and like, wow, you must be an important person. Important. But that, I think we get that idea that if I'm involved in something big, then that means I have value. That I'm valuable if I'm part of something bigger than myself. I don't think God's economy works that way. I think everyone has this inherent value that God gives us that's made into us because we happen to be made in the image of God. But that gives us something to do that is big. But our value doesn't come from the things we do. It doesn't come from our performance, our activities, our accomplishments, our goals that we achieve or don't achieve. Our value comes from God's creation because we're made like Him. We're part of His work. We're something that He deems valuable. And I think, maybe that's why we want to be important, because it's part of who we are. I already said this. Let me just keep going here. God satisfies this need. Unfortunately, as Christians, sometimes we don't really pay attention enough. We don't see it. We don't perceive the way that God intends us to perceive the things that God has done on our behalf. Ephesians chapter 2 says something that's very similar to the verse that Parker read in 1 Peter. I'm going to turn there real quick. Oops, I passed it. You should just read the whole of Ephesians chapter 2 because it's really, rich chapter filled with all kinds of goodness. But we're going to start at the very end. Verse 19, he says, so you're no longer strangers, aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and are of God's household. He's talking to Gentile Christians. That's us, right? Anybody in here Jewish? Many descendant of the Jewish nation. Didn't think so. So you being a Gentile, no longer an alien, no longer a stranger, but you're a citizen now. Like you've gained your citizenship in God's family through Christ. Having been built, this is God's house, on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets, with Christ Jesus himself being the cornerstone, in whom the whole building being fitted together is growing into a holy temple in the Lord, in whom you're also being built together into a dwelling of God in the Spirit. Have any of you ever stacked blocks? Wooden blocks, stacked blocks? Anybody ever stacked cinder blocks or bricks? Built a wall maybe, or a retaining wall, or a fire pit, or something with bricks? Anyone ever been to a house that wasn't built on a solid foundation? One time I went and looked at this house and thought about buying it and found out the foundation had sunk like 11 inches. Not bad. $70,000 to lift that house up. Because the foundation wasn't done properly. He's saying Jesus is this key piece. So like the cornerstone, we don't build houses this way anymore. But it was kind of neat in Kentucky. I don't know if you guys been to those old places back out east. You know, the barns are set on rocks. They have these barns that are hundreds of years old that are sitting on a pile of rocks. There's no mortar or anything. They just stacked the rocks properly. And it blows my mind that these buildings are still there. Granted, they don't have the wind that we have here, so that probably contributes to it. But they have this stone just sitting there on the ground that's on top of another stone, that's on top of another stone, that's on top of another stone. At the bottom is the key. This is Paul. Jesus is the cornerstone. Everything else is based off the cornerstone. If you get the corner unsquare, guess what happens to the rest? It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. You guys ever used a square? You ever try to make a line straight and square with another line? I've had this weird problem. I'm trying to build a fence in my front yard, and I'm like, okay, how do I square the corner on a fence with a piece of string? You know, the plumb bob. Oh, 3, 4, 5. You know, I'm trying to remember that. I'm like, I know it's like 4, 5, 6 or something. You know, 3 numbers in a row, but I couldn't remember. It's time. Sorry about that. Falling in the hole last night. Evidently, if you dig holes in your yard, you should tell people before they walk through in the dark and fall in one. Sorry, Linda. No professional here. Okay, part of something big, important, not the fence. Jesus is this stone that doesn't have any misshapen edges. He's not unsquare. He's not crooked. He's not bent. If you've ever read the C.S. Lewis space trilogy, you know, they're trying to describe a world with no sin and someone that comes into the world that has sin, and the people there don't understand. And the only way to describe it is like, this guy is bent. There's something wrong. He's not straight. He isn't right because of sin. Jesus isn't like that. He's perfect. He's the only thing that can be the basis of our life, the basis of our existence, the basis of God's house. And this is the search for meaning's answer. The search for importance, the search for what I really think I need in life falls down to this simple thing that can go one of two ways. Peter kind of says it slightly differently. If you turn back to 1 Peter, he says, coming to him as to a living stone, which has been rejected by men, but is choice and precious in the sight of God. So if you're building with stones, right, they're all different shape. So you're looking for a stone that fits this hole. And you're going through the pile of stones, picking out the perfect stone that fits right here. And they pick up this stone that's perfectly square. They're like, this is trash. I don't want this. You know, looking at Jesus, saying, this is the ideal. This is the perfect example. This is exactly everything I need in life. and saying, I think this is just a little, wrong. It's not what I want. It doesn't fit my lifestyle. It doesn't fit my desired way of doing things. Maybe it's going to cause me to have to rebuild my entire wall because I've already got this thing going and I just need a rock right here to fit. And I think that's what we're doing. Sometimes we've got our life all planned out. Everything is the way we wanted, and we have this sense that something's missing. And so we take Jesus and we're like, fit in this hole that's in my life. He's like, that's not how it works. You've got to rearrange the whole wall. And you have to start over again with this at the corner. And then the wall can be straight and the building can come up. But if I'm trying to stick God into some hole that's already there, this place isn't going to be built. And this is why they couldn't do it. This is why they rejected him. This is why the builders of God's house, the Jews, saw Jesus and said, no, he doesn't fit. He doesn't belong. Keep reading. It says, for it is written in verse 6, behold, I lay in Zion a choice stone, a precious cornerstone, and he who believes in him will not be disappointed. What does it mean to believe in Jesus? It means you've got to rearrange your house. It means you've got to tear down the foundation of what was already there and put him at the corner and start again. And some of us, it's just too much work. Like, well, I really don't want to do that. I already had most of the house built. I've already got the plans. I've already got things set the way I wanted it. And you mean I have to go and tear it all down? You ever done that? You ever built something and then it was wrong? And you had to tear it down and start over again? One time I helped Matt build a thing for the front of his house. We spent the whole day building it, and I didn't know, but like the next day he tore it all apart, did it again. I was like, sorry, man. This is the struggle that we are faced with when Jesus says, if you want to come after me, you must deny yourself. If you want to follow me, you've got to deny yourself. Whatever that life that it was that I built, it can't come first. It can't be important so much that I'm not willing to tear it down and let it be rebuilt around Jesus at the center. If it's too big, if it's too hard, if it's something I don't want to do, then I don't actually want Jesus. Because there's only one place he fits. He doesn't fit on the side. He doesn't fit on the top. He doesn't fit somewhere in the wall surrounded by everything else in my life. He only goes at the corner. He's only the starting place. And if I can't make him that, then I can't have him in my life. He doesn't accept any other place in the wall. Because he's only worthy of one place. This is supposed to be an encouraging thing. Sorry. And here's where it gets encouraging, okay? Because there's no insignificant brick in God's house. This is how Peter's talking about it. It's like, we're coming to him as a living stone who is rejected by men but precious in the sight of God, choice and precious. He says, you also are living stones, being built up as a spiritual house for a holy priesthood to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. You ever seen a brick archway? Which one of those bricks isn't important? What happens if you take one of them out? It takes all of them. It doesn't matter if it's the bottom one or a little bit of here or the middle. All of them are just as important. They're equally as important. Without one of them, nothing stands up. It's all going to fall over. This is the way God has designed his house. That every single one of us is significant and important. It doesn't matter what the role is. If you read through, the book of Romans chapter 13, you're going to get this picture. He says, we don't all have the same job. We're not the same role. We all have the same gift. But every one of us has something to give. And maybe the brick in the archway doesn't feel significant. But as soon as they're missing, guess what happens? Everyone else notices how significant they were. The book that Peter's writing, First Peter, is written to these discouraged Christians who are scattered because of persecution, who are enduring a great deal. And maybe they needed to hear this because it was hard to continue being a Christian. Maybe they didn't know that they were part of something big, that their life actually mattered in the household of God, the temple of God. And I think, the Jewish person would look at that and be like, wow, you mean I get to be part of the place where God lives in the world? I get to be a piece of this thing that the most holy of holiest beings, the only God, would be willing to dwell with me? You mean I get to be a part of that? I'm a significant piece. God actually wants me there? It's kind of a big deal. God actually cares about us that much. That nobody just exists in God's family. Every one of us has something that we're supposed to bring, something that we're supposed to be, something that we're supposed to do, a role. Our calling is to fashion ourselves, to begin to become like the cornerstone. Because that's the one that everything else is based on. And if I have one square stone and I begin to place these janky, crooked, wobbly things next to it, I think my illustration's breaking down, but the idea is our lives are supposed to be fashioned after His, right? If we place Him at the place in our lives that He's supposed to be, that God has put Him in the universe, then our life gets fashioned after Him. Begin to look like Jesus. Our life begins to change, and the things we do and the way we think, the way we interact with other people becomes different. Because I'm not important on my own for any reason other than I was made in the image of God. None of the things that I do, none of the things that I don't do, they don't make any difference. It's being known by God that matters. And what I do with that. What does it mean to be part of God's house? It means that I'm becoming like Jesus. If we keep reading, we got a choice. Back in verse 6 of 1 Peter chapter 2. He says, this is contained in Scripture, "Behold, I lay in Zion a choice stone, a precious cornerstone, and he who believes in Him will not be disappointed. This precious value then is for you who believe. But for those who disbelieve, the stone which the builders rejected, this became the very cornerstone, and a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense." There's this passage in Matthew that I always thought was really weird. He says, the one who falls on this stone will be broken, but the one on whom this stone falls will be anathema, just scattered to bits, destroyed. It's like, I'm going to come to Jesus, and if I come and I believe in Him, it's going to break me. But then I'm going to be rebuilt the way that I was supposed to be, the way that God wanted me to be. But if I'm not willing to be broken, if I come to Jesus and I think, no, you can't change my life, eventually what's going to happen is I'm going to be destroyed by it. It's like, do you trust God enough to allow Him to break your life? This is a struggle a parent has with a child and a splinter. Like, just let me get it. It's like, no way. I don't trust you. You're going to hurt me. Like, it's going to hurt less. Just let me take it out. And they can't get it. They're like, no way. You're not trustworthy. I'll never believe you can handle this task of the splinter in my finger. I'll just let it fester. And we treat God that way. We're like, no, it's going to hurt too much if my life has to change. It's going to hurt too much if things don't stay the same, if they're not the way that I like them. If I'm going to lose my life, just let me lose it on my own. Instead of trusting God and saying, I know it's going to hurt. but at least I can trust that the one who breaks me is faithful to put me back together. In order for us to be part of God's house, we have to accept Jesus as the cornerstone. And that means our wall has to be rearranged. Our life has to be rearranged. But if I'm not willing to allow that, then something worse will happen in the end. There's a choice that we get to make. It's a continual choice. It's a continual rebuilding. It's not a like once and done thing. You don't just get baptized and all of a sudden you're perfect and like Jesus. That's not how it works. It's like every day I find a new stone that's out of place. I'm like, where did this come from? I'm like, oh, it was sin. That's where it came from. It was my pride. That's where it came from. It was the things that I didn't even realize I'm doing and the person that I didn't even realize I was being, and that's where it came from. And when I see that, what I do with it really matters. Like if I'm faithfully moving those stones and putting it where it falls in line with Christ, then God's pleased with that, no matter how really bad I am at building my life. But if I see what God wants and I say I'm trying to put that in place, I think God's pleased. And I think no matter how ugly I am of a builder, God can do much better. He can actually fix my brokenness. But if I think I'm just going to handle it on my own and it'll be okay, then I'm just going to end up, broken. We got about 3 minutes. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to have a discussion. And